Welcome to the Dr. Ed Show. I'm Dr. Edmund Sulkowski, and we're here with Jessie Klepsic doing the second half of our earlier conversation, and we are talking about Jessie and her commitment to animal wellness and her dedication for 30 past years with Angels for Animals. And if you notice, Jessie wears a little angel. If you can focus on her little pin, I don't think I've ever seen Jessie without that little angel. And even her license plate reflects an angel. Jess, what started you again? Let's just remind the audience to start Angels for Animals.
Well, I worked at the Humane Society, the local Humane Society, for 6 months, and I saw what was going on, and I decided I could do better on my own.
Yeah, that sounds like the Jessie I've known for a long time.
Forever.
So, and you've probably saved the lives and found homes for 1,000 dogs?
Oh, probably easy. I never kept track. I should have, but I didn't, yeah.
Yeah, I bet it has to be at least that.
But it's very interesting over the years how many people have found the perfect dog through me and will call me when the dog has gone to the Rainbow Bridge. Can you get me another one just like that one? Unfortunately not.
Well, they all have their different personalities and needs.
That's what I tell them, yeah. And there's so many out there that do need a home, a good home. A lot of senior dogs. A lot of people won't take a senior dog, but what's wrong with a senior dog? You know.
I think everyone, but maybe one that I've rescued was an older dog, 5 years old or older.
And to me, that's not a senior.
No.
You know, a senior to me is maybe 10 or over.
Well, I think what happens is they figure they can't train them because you can't teach an old dog new tricks, as the saying goes, but actually you can.
Yes, you can.
And then I think there's also, they figure they're not going to have them very long.
That's the biggie.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they want them to live more. In fact, my dog died a year ago, just last week, and I wish he could have lived forever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's tough, you know, but you always have to reflect back on the love you gave them, the love they gave you back, and how you took them from a bad situation, because most of the dogs that come to you are in a bad situation, and how the new home changed their lives.
Correct.
So that's what you focus on. But we always have these conversations all the time, because Jessie and I do talk a lot off the air, as they say. How important is nutrition for these animals, Jess?
Nutrition is absolutely, absolutely important. I tell people that all the time. And some people look at me like, you're crazy. No, I'm not. You really have to read the labels on everything, and you have to understand the garbage that they put into the dog food. And it is garbage, you know. So when you find a good dog food, it never fails. They quit making it.
Yeah. Because it's expensive to make, and sometimes people don't want to pay the cost of it. But if you actually look at what's in dog food, and you think of what dog's supposed to eat, and how these manufactured foods are made. So I have to preface this, Jess, before we go down this rabbit hole. Years and years ago, there was an article that appeared in the Pittsburgh Press, and I think there was one in Washington Observer that was followed a month later. And it wasn't about dog food, it was about me. So I was asked, and they came to my home and gave an interview and took some nice pictures. And it touched a little bit on my involvement with dog rescue and dog nutrition and so forth. And I just made a comment in there that I thought that manufactured food was, I don't even know what I said, but I got attacked by follow-up articles from the manufacturers board, because they monitor all this stuff. What I learned was there's organizations out there that monitor radio, TV, probably now all these pods, that are going on and everything, and newspaper articles they monitor, and then if there's some negative thing to this group or this organization or this, then they're notified, and then they do an attack article. So they attacked me like, what could I possibly know? And I just laughed it off.
I get a lot of that too. People say, what do you know? I know it all.
You know?
No, don't think so.
So buying manufactured food, if that's all you can afford to feed your dog, is better than the dog starving.
Right?
But if you look at how a dog eats and how their intestinal tract is designed, the length, and how their bacteria and their enzymes and everything all are produced, and their teeth, more importantly, even, are all designed to chew meat. So they're carnivores. And cat is 1,000% a carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at what's in a lot of these foods, there's grains and corn, and you know, I've been asked to sit down and write a book many times, and I just don't have the time or the energy or the desire to do that. And I'm not like a lot of these people that have ghostwriters. If I'm going to write a book, I'm writing it. But I have a title for a book. You've never seen a dog attack a cornfield. But you'll see a dog attack a rabbit, or a cat attack a rabbit.
Yeah.
So when you see things like corn and meat byproducts and wheat and barley and rice, that's all garbage food for an animal, in my opinion.
Sugar too.
Well, it's all sugar. That's all that is sugar. And you know what? Dogs have no nutritional requirement for sugar. They can't even process it.
Right.
So then you wonder, why is the dog sick?
Correct.
Because the nutrition's not there. So I always, as you know, made my own dog food. And you know, there's some attributes to having raw food and so forth. But a lot of these dog foods, kibble, I mean, if you knew how they manufactured kibble, and it comes out of an extruder, and then it's sprayed with rancid oils. You know where they get those oils from?
Yeah, they collect them at restaurants, and oh my God, if you ever smelled rancid oil, you'd probably throw up.
It's what sits in the back of a restaurant in a barrel,
right,
in 100-degree weather,
yeah,
and just putrefies out there, and then that's sprayed on the outside of that kibble. Did you ever smell a bag of kibble and go, "Oof"?
Yes,
you know?
yes. You taught me how to do that.
Yeah. So there's a big difference between the nutrient panel and
what is
the
actually
ingredients.
in there,
yeah. All right. And so if you look at the nutrient panel, which they always put in a fold of a bag because it's really hard to read, you look at protein, you look at water, you look at fiber, and I'm missing something here. But you take the first 4 of those ingredients in a nutrient panel.
Well, the first ingredient should be meat, but...
Well, that's tricky. That can actually be tricky because meat is weighed wet, so it's heavier, so that's the first ingredient, but there might not be that much meat in there because things like rice and grain are dry and they're lighter. They're powders.
But what they say is like chicken meal.
That's different, and chicken byproducts is different. That's feathers, beaks, feet, whatever.
You got
intestinal tract. I mean, we probably should do just a show on that. In fact, we will. But it gets tricky, and you really have to understand how to do it. But here's a simple rule here: if you take the first 4 of those and you add them up,
the percentages.
Yeah, it'll say protein, 22%, water, 30%, ash, which is fiber, 50%, whatever those first and 4 ingredients are. And you add them up and you subtract that from 100. And then you'll find out how much sugar's in that. And you'd be shocked. Because all those ingredients, wheat, corn, rice, barley, and then sometimes they actually add sugars to them. That's sugar, and your dog cannot process sugar.
Right.
Sugar not good for you, Jess, and it's terrible for your dog. So that's what we're commenting on over here. You, in my opinion, need to feed your dog quality meat.
Right.
And it becomes expensive and it becomes tricky. And you hear, well, table food's not good. Well, table food's not good if you're adding spices and you're adding sugars and all the things, the sauces that we do on our food. But a good piece of steak or a good piece of hamburger or a piece of quality chicken, wonderful for your animal.
Yeah.
So
I know my dogs would rather eat that than the dog food.
Yeah, yeah. So nutrition is
Key. It's very key.
It's paramount for good overall health and wellness. And people say, well, it's so expensive. I mentioned that before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're going to pay it at one end or the other. You're either going to pay it at the veterinarian's office because your dog isn't doing well,
Right.
or you're going to keep your dog happy and healthy
Mm-hmm.
and feed it the proper way. And like everything else in this country especially, and that's one of the reasons I'm so excited with what happened in the past election, and Robert Kennedy and what he's going to try to do with the food. He's going to get a lot of resistance because these big companies are going to not
Yep.
be happy about all that.
You got that right.
You know, there are hundreds of chemicals that are in our food in this country that Europe will not permit in their food.
Right.
And why is America so sick? There you go. Well, that same thing holds true with animal food.
Right. And you know what? Another thing is the dye. They put dyes in there to make the food look like beef or chicken or whatever else is on the
Or
label.
be colorful, like your dog
Yeah.
cares what color the food is. You know, it's all a marketing ploy.
Right.
When I was nationally lecturing on pet nutrition, I would hold up a bag of dog food, kibble, from a particular manufacturer at the time, and say there's probably more nutrition in this bag than in this food.
I've heard the same thing about cereal over the years when I was growing up as a kid. You get more good out of the box than you do what's in the box.
Well, cereal, Jess, is sugar on a sugar. You know, you take cornflakes and you coat it with sugar. You're eating it's sugar on sugar. You know, if I'm going to do that, I'd rather eat a cookie.
Me too.
Or you know, a nice piece of pie or cake or
Yeah.
something. But anyway, yeah, our nutritional system is so messed up, and the pyramid that they tell us to go by is so wrong. But anyway, nutrition is key for your animal. So
And that
you
applies
do the
to
best you
any
can.
animal, not only just a dog or a cat, even your other animals.
It's species appropriate food.
Thank you.
And if you look how they eat in nature, that's the way they should be eating.
Right.
And we don't do that. You know, in the 50s, there was no dog food in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. That was another marketing ploy to sell waste
Right.
and feed it to your dog. So, I don't know.
The other thing I tell people too when we talk about food, you don't know the condition of the animal they're using for the food, because you see a lot of downed cows that are sick, and they take that cow and they throw it into the mix, and
Well,
dirt and
you
everything that's crap.
You can't do that in the human food
No.
supply, but you can with the animal food
Right.
supply. You know.
So you're getting a lot of really bad stuff in there if you
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah.
And then people will say to me, "Oh, I didn't know that, or never thought about it." But you're absolutely right. Food for anybody is important.
So I know when you have a dog that's up for adoption and you found a forever home for it, and you've gone through that process, which we will talk about, you do give some education on nutrition to your...
Oh yeah, I have probably 6 questions before I get into anything. Where do you live? Do you have another dog? Do you have a secure fence? How many people in the family? What do you feed your dog? That's on my list. I want to know what kind of food they're feeding the dog. And then we do get into a discussion a lot of times on food. And I always say no corn, gluten, soy, or byproducts. That's my spiel. And a lot of people will say, I never knew that. And I said, tell them about the bag, how to read that, and different things that they could do to check on that and stuff like that. And probably 9 out of 10 people that I go through that with, I'm going to check into that and I'll change it. If that's what you're feeding the dog now, that's what we will feed. I don't get a lot of resistance on that.
Yeah, they're the reason dogs have coat problems, or they're biting their paws, or they're having bowel issues.
Right.
And it's always can go back to what you're feeding that dog.
Right.
And of course, just as a side note, you don't want to abruptly change the food.
Correct. It has to be done over at least a 5-day period.
You slowly integrate it over a week's time. Now,
Yeah.
every dog that I ever had that I call Jessie dogs that I took in, I changed their food instantly and never had a problem, but I kind of know what I'm doing. The average person probably should not do that.
Correct.
Because they don't know what to look for, maybe
Right.
that the dog is having a problem with
And
it.
a lot of people don't pay attention. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's just like having a kid. The same thing applies to having an animal. You have to pay attention. You have to make sure everything's working properly. They have no problems. And you've got to take care of them. You've got to take them out to do their business. You've got to feed them. And if they have to go to the vet for shots, it's the same MO as having a child. You would do that for your child.
You love them as part of your family. And you know
Correct.
the only difference between an animal and
Right.
a son or daughter?
Well,
The dog doesn't ask you for your keys to your car. You don't have to put it to college.
I was going to say I don't have any children, but I'll tell you what, I could have 1,000,000 dogs and I'd be just as happy. Yeah.
But nutrition is extremely important.
Yes.
So let's talk about the process, Jess. I want to. No, I'm not doing this because I've had your dogs.
Yeah, I know.
I'm done with animals right now. I'm too busy. But I want to get a Jessie dog. I want to call Angels for Animals and take a look at some of the dogs you have.
Okay.
So do you have big dogs or little dogs?
Mostly little now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And certain breeds?
Mostly Shih Tzus and Yorkies.
Occasionally you get
Yeah.
get another one.
Yeah. Another
They're
small dog.
all
Yeah.
a small dog.
Yeah.
So what's my process? What do I have to do?
Well, if you look on the internet and you find us, or if a friend tells you to call, you have to call me. My number's there. You call me. And the very first thing, most people will say, this is John Brown, and I'm looking for. And then we go into that, well, where do you live? Because now that we're older and et cetera, we won't go much more than an hour out from Pittsburgh. And I get a lot of people call me from Ohio and different places. And our stuff on the internet says we don't adopt out of the Pittsburgh area.
So the reason is because you go to the homes and
I do a
actually
home-
do an inspection.
Yes, the very last thing we do is the home. And we're not going to travel because if the dog has to come back, I have to go get it. If there's any problem, I have to go get it. But it takes me a whole day to make an appointment with that person to go check their house, talk to the family because everybody has to be there, and if they have another pet, that pet has to be there too. So we sit down for at least an hour, interview those people, get a feel for them. But the very first thing is the telephone interview. So I go through, I have a list, and I mark it right under their name. Where do you live? That's important because, as you know, some parts of the country are not good places. We'll just put it that way.
Springfield, Ohio, for one.
Well, I had the same name, Angels for Animals Rescue in Ohio called me, and I talked to the owner, the lady that established the place. She was very upset with me because I was using their trademark. I said, I don't have a trademark. What do you mean I'm using your trademark? I was in business before you were. Of course, she's a multi-million-dollar organization now. So we talked for a while, and after we talked, she was happy. But because of that, I won't go into another state. And then now there are different laws for going into other states. You have to have the dog's shots all up to date and a whole bunch of other stuff. So we don't do that as a rule unless you have adopted from me before. Then we'll look at it.
The state of Pennsylvania requires rabies. That's the only
Absolutely. Yeah.
vaccination that's law and required.
Right. Yeah. Other shots are, like Michelle said, that's optional. So we find out where you live. Do you have another dog? Because for 99% of our dogs, we need a companion dog. And they do help train in the dog coming in, like you said.
Yeah, they mimic.
Then we'll ask them, do you have a secure fenced yard? Well, no, I just take my dog out in the yard and I stand her with it, or I take it out on a leash or whatever. Our dogs are not leash trained. They're not used to being out in the yard by themselves. Plus, if it's a small dog, a hawk, an owl, or an eagle could pick them up for food.
Coyote.
Now we have the coyotes, you're correct. And people tend to turn, and I've done this myself, and my husband will say to me, that dog's still outside. And it'll be the phone ringing, and I'll go check who's on the phone and come back in a minute. But in that minute, that bird could have my dog.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so secure fenced yard. How many people in the family? Husband and wife? Where do you work? Do you work at home? Do you work away? How long would the dog be by itself? Then if there's older people in the home, you have to watch that because some dogs will get underfoot.
Yeah.
And if you have a grandmother or something, you have to be careful. Then we talk about, after the job, we talk about the food, like I told you. I said, well, what are you feeding your current animal? So we'll go into that. Okay. Excuse me. I'm getting dry here.
Well, take a sip of water
I
here.
don't know where I put it. Here it is.
And you probably enlighten a lot of people with that food thing because people aren't aware.
Absolutely.
And most people just go by what the commercials say that they see on TV.
Can't do that.
Yeah.
So I'll tell them I have sinus drainage, and boy, that's bad. I need 3 references, people that know you, plus your vet and your groomer. And I do call everybody, and I tell them this. I had a friend call one time, and his sister had called me. In fact, you know the person. And I said, your sister applied for a dog. He says, absolutely not. You do not give her a dog. So she never got a dog. Then after I check every reference, I say, then we do a home visit. We come to your house, bring the dog, the foster person. They are in on this too because they might pick up something I wouldn't pick up. And that has happened quite a lot. And then, like I said, we'll sit down and talk to them and go over the whole spiel again. But after I talk to them, I call my foster home and I tell them, and I have 2 ladies, I'll tell them what that person has told me. So they evaluate that and they say, okay, that sounds workable. So then that person will call them because they always hear something I didn't hear. But that's the reason to talk to those people. You hear a lot more than if they fill out an application, because I get that too. Well, you don't have an application online. I said, I don't do applications. You're talking to me. This is your application. Because I can hear what you're telling me. It might not all be so.
Yeah.
But then the second interview with the foster home, that brings out a lot more because then she'll ask different questions and she'll dig more into it because she knows the animal. So she knows what we're dealing with and what we have to have.
Right.
So if she calls me back and says, they're okay, let's go ahead with the checking the references and let's see where we are with all that. And then if all that works out, then we go to their home to do the home check.
And if that home meets your requirements, you'll adopt the dog out.
Yes, but it's still a tentative thing because they sign a contract and they pay me a fee for that because, of course, the dog has all its shots, it's spayed or neutered, and groomed if that's a necessity. And we've been feeding the dog for months. So there is a cost involved, like we discussed before. But if that dog doesn't work in 2 weeks, you'll know it. And then they call me, I'll go get the dog and bring it back. Sometimes they want a little bit more time. Well, I could use another week or 2. That's fine. We do that. But we keep tabs on them. We call them every couple of days, find out how the dog's doing. Everything going okay? Can we help you with anything? So that normally works. That's worked over 30 years pretty well. I've only ever had to take very few dogs back.
Because that's one of your requirements,
Yeah.
that the adoptee actually signs a contract saying, I'll give the dog back if I don't want it, or if there's something happens, it goes right back to Jessie and Angels for
I
Animals.
tell them, it doesn't go to a relative, you call me. Then I have to interview that person if that's going to be the case. Case in point, probably 4 years ago, I had a lady call me. She was a neighbor of a dog I adopted, and her friend had died. the husband didn't want the dog. And she was in tears. She said, he doesn't want that dog. I don't know, blah, 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 blah. I said, give me his phone number. I'll call him right now. I'm going. And I went and got her. She's been with me 4 years. She's a senior now. She's 14. But at 10 years old, I'm not going to readopt her out because people aren't going to take care of an older dog like that, you know. Mm-hmm. So she's still with me. But she fit right into my pack, so we're all worked out fine. So then we keep track with the adopting people to make sure everything's working out fine. And then if at the end of 2 weeks they said, yep, we're going to keep the dog, I deposit the funds into my account. And then we still keep track. A lot of people will text you pictures, they'll call you on the phone, said everything's working out fine, the dog is adjusting, we got the food that you told us to get. And, you know, periodically they'll call us and things like that. So that's worked for the years I've been doing this.
Yeah.
Really well.
So the first step is to call Angels for Animals, and that number that you would call?
724-941-5737.
And you don't want to call after 9 o'clock at night, right?
No, I like to go to bed.
And then you set up a phone interview at that point, because you're probably going to get your voicemail, because I know you're out on the go all the time.
Normally I call everybody back like the next day, you know.
And you have a phone interview, and then that process begins.
Yeah, they'll have a second interview with the foster home on the phone, and then we check the references and all that, yeah.
So what length of time between the initial contact to it all resolves?
Probably a week.
Week? That goes by pretty quick then.
Yeah.
Do you do this over Christmas?
No.
Why?
We take everything off the internet probably second week in December because people don't pay attention. They're too busy doing other things. The animal does not get any attention, and you have to put the time in with it just like anything else. They have to feel that it's their new home. They have to become accustomed to that person's lifestyle, routine, whatever. And also, too, we have to be very careful that they're not out of the house for long periods of time, because that animal's going to have to go to the bathroom, and
exactly.
none of our dogs are crazy.
It's too crazy of a season to adopt a dog.
Yeah.
Just we're at the end of the show.
Already?
Yeah. So I want to remind everybody that they can listen to the Dr. Ed Show on AM 1250 The Answer every Saturday morning at 9 a.m., 9 to 10. We have some wonderful guests all the time and conversations about health and wellness and a number of other topics. So it's every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on AM 1250 The Answer, 92.5 FM. And remember, a healthy pet is a happy pet. When you're healthy, you're happy as well. And I want to thank Jessie for coming on and sharing all her information with Animal Care. We'll be back. Bye-bye.